We start with the media move sending tremors across the globe. During a news conference in Great Britain this morning, President Trump weighed in on ABC taking Jimmy Kimmel's late night show off the air indefinitely.
Jimmy Kimmel was fired because he had bad ratings more than anything else, and he said a horrible thing about a great gentleman known as Charlie Kirk. And Jimmy Kimmel is not a talented person. He had very bad ratings, and they should have fired him a long time ago. So, you can call that free speech or not. He was fired for lack of talent.
Now, network late-night ratings are declining across the board, but it is not accurate to characterize Kimmel's ratings as bad. In fact, his show was the top late-night program, the top-rated, among young viewers, which is what advertisers care the most about. That was in the most recent quarter. Now, Kimmel also didn't actually say anything bad specifically about Charlie Kirk. We're going to play his comments in full in just a moment. But first, I want to get to CNN's Elena Treen, who is in Windsor. Elena.
Yeah, I actually found that moment about Jimmy Kimmel coming up during this press conference to be one of the most notable, Dana. Part of it is because not a single American reporter who was actually in the room for the press conference asked about this. Of course, this is one of the biggest stories right now happening inside the U.S. And I remind you as well that this is an issue that the president ran on, this idea of protecting the First Amendment and free speech, banning government censorship. It was actually one of the first executive orders that the president signed when coming into office for his second term. It was actually a British reporter who posed this question about Kimmel to the president. Now, as you heard there in what he had said and what you played from the press conference, the president kind of dismissed it, tried to blame it on bad ratings, but he did not mention the intense pressure we know that there has been on some of these companies, specifically on ABC after Kimmel's remarks regarding Charlie Kirk from the FCC chair, Brendan Carr. Now, we did hear Brendan Carr this morning discuss some of this. Listen to what he said.
They went from being court jesters that made fun of everybody, as should happen. You should parody everybody. Trust me, I'm getting my fair share of parodies, and that's fine. But they started replacing that and becoming court clerics and enforcing a very narrow world view. And I think that just tanked the business model. Again, President Trump has sort of unlocked the ability of companies to say, we need to go a different direction.
Look, I mean, clearly, I think this is a very major story, obviously, back in the U.S. right now. And in part of this, again, is because this has been such a big issue for the president. And even if you think about the vice president, when J.D. Vance has come to the U.K., come to Europe, he's brought up free speech. We also know, of course, free speech is one of the things that the British prime minister is battling right now. A lot of criticism over how he is handling that here in the U.K. All to say, it clearly has been something that has been on the president's mind as well. He posted about Kimmel just after 1 a.m. He was actually inside Windsor Castle behind me when he did that. One of the few things he posted about while being here in the United Kingdom for this state visit. And so for him to dismiss this, of course, try to downplay it as bad ratings, saying Kimmel has bad talent, completely, I think, dismissing the pressure we've seen from his FCC chair, Brendan Carr. Dana?
And the right to free speech is part of why the United States is not part of Great Britain anymore, but we can talk about that later. Thank you so much, Elena. I want our viewers to hear for themselves exactly what Jimmy Kimmel said on his show Monday night, and then what the FCC chair, Brendan Carr, said yesterday.
We hit some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them and doing everything they can to score political points from it. In between the finger pointing, there was grieving. On Friday, the White House flew the flags at half-staff, which got some criticism. But on a human level, you can see how hard the president is taking this.
My condolences on the loss of your friend Charlie Kirk. May I ask, sir, personally, how are you holding up over the last day and a half, sir?
I think very good. And by the way, right there, you see all the trucks? They've just started construction of the new ballroom for the White House, which is something they've been trying to get, as you know, for about 150 years. And it's going to be a beauty.
Yes. Okay. He's at the fourth stage of grief, construction. There's demolition, construction. This is not how an adult grieves the murder of someone he called a friend. This is how a 4-year-old mourns a goldfish, okay?
They have a license granted by us at the FCC And that comes with it an obligation to operate in the public interest. And we can get into some ways that we've been trying to reinvigorate the public interest and some changes that we've seen. But frankly, when you see stuff like this, I mean, look, we can do this the easy way or the hard way. These companies can find ways to change conduct, to take action, frankly, on Kimmel, or, there's going to be additional work for the FCC ahead.
I'm joined by a terrific group of reporters here at the table. CNN's Stephen Collinson, Tia Mitchell of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, Zolan Kano-Youngs of the New York Times, and Frank Sesno, former CNN Washington bureau chief, anchor, White House correspondent, and now professor at the George Washington University's School of Media and Public Affairs. Frank, the floor is yours.
The floor is mine. First of all, to Kimmel, it's just not funny. You don't make jokes out of someone's death. You don't make jokes out and try to make political hay out of a situation like that. There may be some on the left who found that amusing or said, well, you go getcha. But it's in terrible taste. It's incredibly painful. And if I were his producer, I would say, just don't do that. So the uproar is not surprising. The cost, however, is unacceptable. And I have to look at that cost in conjunction with everything else. It's not just Jimmy Kimmel. It's a $15 billion lawsuit against the New York Times. It's a lawsuit against the Des Moines Register because we don't like a poll. It's settlements with George Stephanopoulos for 60 Minutes because we don't like the way you edit. I come back to Brendan Carr, the chair of the FCC, who said, and I quote, in 2023, censorship is the authoritarian's dream. And what I worry the most about, after a career in this business, which has been built on my job is to try to tell the truth. My job is to give voice to other people, even when the voice is unpopular, sometimes wrong, sometimes hurtful. To see a government-sponsored effort like this, not just in one case, but across the board, to crack down on free expression, odious and wrong and unfunny as it may be.
And just to go back, Jimmy Kimmel did, separate and apart from that moment in his monologue on Monday, issue a statement after Charlie Kirk was murdered and said, instead of the angry finger pointing, can we just for one day agree that it is horrible and monstrous to shoot another human? On behalf of my family, we send love to the Kirks and to all the children, parents, and innocents who fall victim to senseless gun violence.
He did. And I also think it's important to call attention to the president's reaction after this, after he posted on social media celebrating this action on Kimmel, but also saying that other late night hosts could be next.
Jimmy Fallon
and Seth Meyers, which undermines the idea that this is exclusively just about these comments that were said on Kimmel. You were saying this is part of something broader. I would say it's even broader than just a crackdown on media companies, but more so a broad crackdown on dissent, using the machine of the federal government to crack down on dissent. We've seen numerous examples, including recent examples this week. The Trump administration has foreshadowed going after the tax-exempt status of NGOs, basically claiming without evidence that there's a network of these democratic groups that are encouraging or facilitating violence. They have gone after bureaucrats as well that have expressed dissenting views and ousted them from the federal government. Trump has, without clarity, talked about investigating different groups and designating, without specifying anything, groups as domestic terrorists, even though there's really no legal mechanism to do that. He's pulled in different cabinet officials to do this as well. Marco Rubio with increased vetting on visas for people that express dissenting views.
And yet, I just want to follow up on that, because there's kind of a chicken or the egg situation here when it comes to the people Trump cares about, and those are the people who voted for him. You were out and talking to conservative voters yesterday.
100%.
They support what he's doing.
That's right. I went to a rural area just an hour outside of Detroit where the vice president was going. It was originally advertised as talking about Trump's domestic policy bill. You may not be surprised to hear that the vice president talked about this as well and the actions that they could take after the assassination of Charlie Kirk. And I got there early to talk to some of the supporters there, and they welcomed this, right? There is, and from the grassroots up in the MAGA circles, there has been a thinking of, the responding to what they deemed was the cancel culture perpetuated by the left, and now are welcoming the federal government backing an effort to retaliate here in their own way. And look, people at that speech said they wanted to see this.
Been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the they're doing.